My guest today is Jonathan Green, and he is a ghostwriter to celebrities and bestsellers. I met him in San Diego earlier this year, and we were at a dinner with some people who were mutual friends, and we got to talking and realized we had so much in common because we're both so much in this Kindle world. So I'm really excited to talk to him about what it means to be a ghostwriter and how that can incorporate into the whole world of Hi, Jonathan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm so glad to be here. Guys, I'm sorry for a little background noise. I just had a baby. Well, my wife had a baby a few days ago, and we haven't checked out of the hospital yet, but I didn't want to make you wait, so I'm excited to spend some time with you. And really, I love talking about writing, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. I'm really excited to talk to you. I have so many questions, and I had my audience also help me out, contribute some questions that they were wondering about. But I think what we should start with is getting you to give us a little bit of background about yourself, and what did your journey look like in building up to becoming a ghostwriter that works with celebrities and bestsellers?
Yeah, my whole career started with writing a blog about 10 years ago about my dating life because I always have dating misadventures. I'm the person who the waiter spills a drink on you and then I fall. So it always feels like I'm in a movie. I was on a romantic date where I asked a girl to kiss me and then a bird pooped on her head. Like right as I went in for the kiss. And she's like, I can't believe this happened to me. And I was like, that's pretty normal for me. So my blog used to be all about my dating misadventures. Now, of course, I'm married, but along the way, that blog became very popular and someone cold called me and said, would you write a book with us? That book had my name on it, and that was in the direct response space. So I began writing informational products, and from there, some people saw that book and said, hey, will you work with us? So at first, I did some partnerships, and then I began to, for some of my friends, write products for them. So before I was ghostwriting Amazon books and Kindle books, I was writing stuff in the direct response space for all sorts of topics, because I'm a really good researcher more than anything else. There are plenty of better writers than me, but researching was really my skill. So I've written books on everything from diabetes and hypertension to dealing with hair loss. My really first big massive book was about how to get your boyfriend to propose. And that sold over 100,000 copies because there's lots of girls who are in between relationship and married who want to just flip that final switch. My wife used it on me. That's why we're married and we just had our third child. So my career kind of went that way. And then a few years ago, my first book on Amazon was when a client of mine had me write a book on potty training. I wrote it about potty training my daughter. And then he said, oh, you know, we're not going to release this. And I said, well, then can I release it on Amazon since you're not going to release it in direct response? And that's what I did. And I realized at that time that you can't put out a book as the dad. So I rewrote it under a lady's name. And that was my first big success on Amazon because nobody wants to learn potty training from daddy. They want to learn it from mom.
Interesting.
So I put that out. That was a huge success for me. And I said, wow, this Amazon thing's pretty cool. And I started to get some attention. Some of my other clients said, hey, would you do an Amazon book for us? I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I got more and more into that. And the year before I met you, the same event in San Diego, one of our mutual friends said, hey, do you do ghostwriting? And I was winding away from it at the time. And he convinced me to take some jobs. He started sending me bigger and bigger leads. And at that same event, I met one of my favorite TV stars. And I approached him. I said, and no one recognized him because he's famous for being a redneck millionaire. And I watch those shows. And so everyone goes, who's that hillbilly? I go, no, that guy's an investor. He's in overalls, but I watch a show on CNBC. And so I talked to the guy. I was the only one to recognize him. I said, he might be the richest guy here. And it was really one of those, you don't know it when you don't know. And from there, I began to take more jobs and meet other celebrities who most of them I have NDAs with, unfortunately. I'm more of a Discovery Channel, CNBC type celebrity. I'm not super big time yet, but I am charging near the top end of the market. And it really came about because each client, I would just raise the price as my calendar filled up. And now I take almost no clients. I'm now down to 3 or 4 clients a year. But a big reason I ghostwrite more than anything else is that it allows me to fund the rest of my business growth. So if I take a ghostwriting job, it gives me enough money that I don't have to do anything else while I write 5 or 6 books in one of my new series. And that's really the power for me. And that's how I've grown my business. And some of the people that approached me, someone read one of my books on Amazon, emailed me, and he said, hey, will you help me write a book? And he was a billionaire. And he said, I'm surprised you answered me. And I said, do people not answer billionaires? Like, how much do you think I'm making from Kindle books? Because it doesn't start with a B. That's very flattering. I don't know if anyone does, but the people that can randomly read your book are so amazing. And I don't advertise ghostwriting services. If you visit my website, you won't see anything about it. But if you read my books or you read my emails, I mention it sometimes, and people just cold email me and say, hey, would you work with me, or would you work with my friend? And that's how I get most of my clients. I don't do any client pursuit. I don't have like a client funnel. I don't put ads on LinkedIn. I just wait for people to approach me, and I don't advertise anywhere because I'm very much at the discretion. My contract is very heavy on the NDA. The biggest thing that determines price is which level of NDA we have. Can I tell anyone? Can I only tell people on cold calls, or is it code of silence? And right now, current clients go for code of silence. I go, great. My silence is for sale. Because I don't mind. I love writing. And for me, the most important part is that I get to help someone tell their story. So I'm a nonfiction ghostwriter. I haven't done any fiction jobs because I'm not a fiction writer. I am working on my own first fiction series, but my passion is someone comes to me, they have a story, they go, I want to share my story with the world. One of my favorite clients, who I am allowed to talk about, is a super high-level doctor. And his father was one of the first 40 black officers in the U.S. military in World War II. And he said, I want to tell my father's story. And so together we wrote a biography of his father that I'm really proud of. That's really sells. It has both of our names on it. He was so happy. He goes, put your name on it too. And so I'm constantly putting the word out there, because to tell the story of someone's father, it's the most important book I've ever worked on, because what's closer to your heart, right? So I had to get it right. I was in constant fear. What if I get it wrong? I don't know what it's like to live in World War II, let alone to be a minority and go through the experiences. And his father had like 4 careers. He had all these amazing journeys. And telling that story is really what I'm passionate about. He goes, I want to tell my dad's story, but I don't know how. And that's really how people approach me. And those are the projects I get the most excited about.
Wow, that's amazing. It's super important work for people to get their message out there. My next question, actually, I think you pretty much addressed it, because I was going to say that obviously you're a very good writer. So why do you ghostwrite instead of just writing and publishing your own books? But you do both, right? You are writing and publishing your own books. You're writing your own nonfiction, writing your own fiction now, and you do the ghostwriting to kind of like fund that and fund your life, right?
Yeah, so I think of it as fast and slow money. The ghostwriting pays money immediately, which gives me enough space to work on all my other projects. And the other issue is that I can write faster than I can publish. So I write anywhere from 6 to 10 books a month. I can't publish 6 to 10 books a month with my current marketing thing. I actually publish under 5 different pen names of my own. And I have 2 publishers on top of those that I publish books with. And after that, I do my ghostwriting job. So I'm just a very prolific writer. Right. And that's another problem. It's not like I'm saying, hey, I can write for myself or a client. I'm able to do both, because writing is my best skill. Of anything else I do, it's the thing I'm best at. And also, I get clients, I only take clients who have jobs or careers or stories that I enjoy telling. And it's kind of like you get to have a little adventure with each job. And that's why I do it. So for the financial reasons and because I actually like it.
That's awesome. And the writing is essentially, it's your high income skill. Like that's what you can do. Like you said, it's quick money. It's like, you know how to do it. You know how to do it fast. You're serving other people and you're getting paid while you do it. And then your own publishing journey is more the slow growth. Even though you're doing well with it, it's something that has like the more long-term kind of vision involved, right? Yeah, that's awesome. Exactly. Actually, and I wanted to ask you, how fast do you write? How many words can you write in a day?
So it depends. I have a problem with my eyes. I don't know if you can see, but I have these things on my eyes, and I can only be on a computer about 2 or 3 hours a day. Every morning I start my 30 minutes of eye exercises. Wow. So that I'm blind. If I don't do my exercise, I'm on the computer too much, I'll have to wear a blindfold for 2 or 3 days. So gosh. It's a limitation. Before that, the problem started just a little under 2 years ago. I started to notice I was having a problem, and I thought I was going blind. And I said, I have to build a business where I can support my wife and my kids and my family, even if I go blind. And when you're a writer, that's like the exact opposite. So I used to write 20,000 words a day by hand on the computer. Now I switched entirely to a dictation system. I have an entire team that works for me that takes my dictations and turns them into rough drafts and cleans up everything. And then I do all my editing. Actually, I have a giant 13 by 13 inch e-reader that you can edit on because it's a black, it doesn't hurt my eyes. So everything I do is almost an adaptation to that. But it's actually been into the best thing that ever happened to me. So now I dictate. I'm on the beach. on my little island. I spend all my time with my kids. So they'll be playing on the beach 10 feet away from me while I'm dictating. I spend more time with them and less in my chair. When I dictate, I tend to do 3 one-hour sessions a day, which generates 20 to 30,000 words. In my biggest day, I've done 60,000 words.
Wow.
So it's so much faster. The thing is, and what it used to take me 8 to 10 hours, I can now do in 2 to 3. Right. So dictation, when you build out the rest of the system, because you have to have a process, because it's hard to dictate as good as I write, to turning it into the rest of it. But now that I have my system, the average book for me takes 2 to 3 days, just depending how hard I'm pushing. If I have an emergency, I can write a book in a day, but I don't push myself that hard. I don't want to. And really the other limitation is when my throat gets sore, so I don't want to push so far, just like a singer. So all those exercises opera singers do for their voices, I look up those as well. Those are my main limitations. But dictation makes me super fast, but I was already notoriously fast even when I wrote by hand. Amazing.
Wow. And so what do you do for, what does your process look like for outlining your books? Do you outline, or do you just go for it and then outline as you go?
No, I outline like super detailed. So my average outline will be 40% to 60% the length of the book. Depending on how much I know the topic. If it's a topic I know really well, then the outline might just be chapter titles, because I've done it so many times. But in my process for outlining is that I do it all in Scrivener. I now have researchers I hire. I have, for my nonfiction series, I have an SOP, which has like 100 steps. And it starts with emailing my followers if they're interested in the topic and asking them to describe the problem and how they feel, so I get their language and find out their biggest problems or the biggest benefits for them, the most important parts. Or I'll look at forums where people talk about the topic to get their exact language. That's the first part of it. Then I look at Google Scholar for medical research. I look at competing books and I read all their best and worst reviews. I find out what do people like, what's missing, what do people need, what do they look for in the structure. So I have a really systemized and detailed SOP that Steve Scott, you may have met him, designed it together this year. He's a much better writer than me. And so we sat down and said, let's design the perfect outline for a book. We worked on that. And so that's the SOP I work from now. One thing you have learned from fiction is that I need to be more detailed. Because I dictate, working on my fiction book, I kept remembering or forgetting character names. And I realized I have to rewrite down a list of who the characters are in each chapter. So I have my whole book in Scrivener, section by section, and then I have an old iPad, a tiny one, and I just look at one section and dictate that, then I look at the next. So I realized I need to copy character names to see who's going to appear in it. So for fiction, I'm learning, because it's my first book, it's a different process, but I'm a very detailed outliner. Now, for my books, because I'm so prolific, I hire researchers. So I'll hire someone who's like a Harvard medical grad student and say, okay, do my research for this book on depression. And they'll come at me with a book with links to hundreds of studies and tons of research, so that I really want anything medical or anything in that space has to be heavily research-based. The science has to be rock solid for me. So really, I am way more research than writing. So I did a huge book with Steve on how to quit smoking a few months ago, and the research took me 15 hours, and then the dictation took me 4. So it's that research takes that much more time for me. But once you have it mastered, the beauty is it's easy to hire researchers. There's loads of people in college or high school that love to research and can do it if you have a really clear process. But it has taken me about 3 years to get down to the perfect outlining structure for the books that I write.
Wow, that's really interesting. And it sounds like having a team is really important to your process too. Like understanding that you can't do this alone. Like it is so much more advantageous to you to have that team of people that can help you along.
Absolutely. Yeah. I started by sitting down and going, what is the most important thing that I do? Of all the things I spend all day doing, what generates the most revenue? And for me, that's dictating. Anytime I'm not dictating, I'm losing money. So then because of my eyes, I sat down. And last year I had a bigger team. We've been through a lot of revisions. Now I have 2 full-time employees. I have a full-time editor who manages and hires contract employees like crazy. We hire 3 to 5 people on Upwork a week for smaller projects. So that way we can do a lot simultaneously. We used to have 2 full-time transcriptionists, but now we've switched to using a software solution and then using an editor. So we'll hire a junior editor to clean up the transcription and edit at the same time before she sees everything. So we've been refining the process to where we can basically maximize my volume and hers. So I'm able to write 3 books a week, and she's able to edit about 2.5 right now with our system. But doing it without a team, doing it on my own, I would be writing probably 2 books a month. So bringing in a team, I know it's scary because it seems like it's going to be really expensive, and I wouldn't have done it except for my problem with my eyes. And I started to discover that if you are strategic and careful, and especially if you hire project by project, you go, okay, this is what a client will pay me, so this is my budget. And then you can find people who work on the project for the budget you can afford, and it really helps. It speeds you up in the part. And I was actually reading for other people who in fiction pay someone to write the entire like original outline or the rough treatment. I thought, oh, that's so cool.
Yes.
Because that would speed me up too. I'm able, for my fiction books, I've already outlined like the first 20 books in the series, but they're loose. So to have someone go through, especially if I say, put their character names in every chapter, I'll forget them, then that would really help me structure. And so I'm interested in that. I'm actually thinking about that because once I've outlined the first book and I know my vision, I'm good at the big vision, but it's okay to have people help you at different parts in the process. Like I know some people say, oh, you have to write by hand with a typewriter, you have to outline with a quill, and there's these, you create these artificial rules, and it's like, okay, make it harder for yourself. I have a friend who's a better writer than me. I read one of his books, I go, God, if I could write like this, that'd be amazing. But he writes 500 words a week.
Right.
And so he's written 3 books in the 5 years I've known him. I said, oh, that's awesome. I'm not as good a writer, but I make a lot more money. I support my family. We live on a tropical island, and I'm able to work on lots and lots of projects. My hero is Isaac Asimov, who wrote over 1,000 books, and that's my goal. Every time someone says, well, where are you at your business? And I just wish I'd written more books. I have so many outlines. I have my outline book with me. I have over 100 nonfiction books already outlined that I want to write, and then maybe 30 fiction books. So I'm like, writing is my passion. That's why I do it. I love doing it, and I just wish I could do it more.
Yeah. That's interesting you mentioned Isaac Asimov, because isn't he known for using ghostwriters as well?
Maybe he is. I don't know that.
Okay.
So that
yeah,
I don't have a problem with that. So for me, it's like,
for sure. I'm going to research that and look into that, because I think he was using ghostwriters as well.
I sometimes for projects hire sub ghostwriters as well. Like if I write the vision of the book, and so whenever I hire a ghostwriter, I edit it myself before it goes to my editor, so it matches my vision and language style. I have done that before. I've hired junior ghostwriters for projects. When I first started out, I'd get paid by someone to write a book, and I would pay the same amount for someone else to write me 10. So I go, hey, this is great, 1 to 10 ratio. That's how I started building up volume. So that makes sense, because he did write a lot of books. That's exactly my dream. I'm like, I want to get more of my stories out there. So for me, however I do it is something I would absolutely do. So I don't have a problem with being a ghostwriter or hiring ghostwriters, especially as long as the vision matches what I'm trying to create. Then it's just a way to accelerate how many stories you can tell.
For sure. And reach more readers and bring that entertainment or that information or those solutions to more people, right? So this is an interesting question that one of my students had, or someone in one of my groups, and they wanted to ask, do you ever feel overwhelmed in your day-to-day life of being a celebrity ghostwriter, and how do you cope with that? Yeah,
so sometimes we have, like my family's been through some challenges in the last year. Last year we had some really big medical emergencies, and so that really stank. And sometimes you get in a situation where you're like, oh, I got to take a job I don't really want to take, or I got to do something because we got to pay this surprise hospital bill, and our insurance company decided not to cover us. And so we had like things outside our control. I thought I'd done the best by getting my family good insurance, and we had a whole problem. We ended up having to sue a Chinese insurance company, which, as you can imagine, didn't go well because there's no rule of law. So they go, oh, you lose, come find us. And so we had challenges like that lead me to overwhelm. As far as book projects, I don't have that when I'm writing. The biggest challenge, and this is why I've started doing less ghostwriting, is when you send a client a book and then they go, oh, I had my friend do a rewrite. And this reminds me of like whenever you're selling a computer, whenever you're in tech support and someone says, I got advice to a friend, you know it's going to be a nightmare. It's the exact same thing. I had someone whose friend had edited their book, and they sent it back to me. I said, this is fine, but I said, we have to change the NDA. You can't tell anyone I wrote this. I said, you cannot, this will, I was like, I'll go out of business if people think I wrote this book. I said,
wow,
I'll give you, I said, but your friend made this book really bad. And so I said, I make guarantees that the book will be good, that it'll be below a certain refund rate, that you'll get 5-star reviews. But if you put this out there, I said, I'll do it because you're my client and you pay me. I'll do whatever you pay me for, right? But just don't tell anyone I wrote this. Please don't send me referrals. And he goes, oh, wait, I didn't. And then he looked, he goes, I didn't realize they'd done so much. Just keep your version. Another client I have, because it's hard because he's my nicest client and he's also my most stressful, which happens. he said model a certain type of, he goes, model this book. And it was a very conversational book, which is a style I tend to write conversationally. And then I sent him the whole rough draft, which took me a huge project, a lot of work, because we had to do a lot of research. This is a client who didn't provide me as much research as I normally get. And I sent it back to him and he goes, oh, you know what? I want to model a different book. I want it to be super like businessy and really high structure rather than conversational. And I said, oh, that's cool. That's the exact opposite of what you initially asked me. Okay. But one of the things that I've learned is to charge enough that doesn't bother me. So that's why I raise my rates to a point where I go, I don't care if a person says, I hate the rough draft and disappears. I get enough deposit. I mean, it's hard because obviously you want every book to be perfect, but as a ghostwriter, if you get emotionally attached to any part of the book or any chapter, then you're in real danger because it's not your baby. Yes. So I don't become emotionally attached. Whenever a client sends back a first version, I send it to my editor. And sometimes she'll go, oh, he's really ruining it. Don't even tell me. I don't want to get emotionally attached. And so helping someone there who's a filter really helps. Those are the moments where I feel the most overwhelmed. The other issue is in January, 6 of my clients all said they wanted to launch their books in February. And I finished 5 of them, and all 5 changed their minds. And the one who really wanted to launch in February is the one I didn't finish. That really stressed me out. I'm like, I don't like that part because I want to give people what they want. And so being behind with the client really bothers me. Other clients, sometimes I'll send them the rough draft and never hear from them again. And I go, I don't know where you went. And I had a few clients that happened with as well, where you write a book and it never gets released. That happens more than you think. Considering what I charge, I'm astounded that someone will pay this much money and then just take the book and go, okay, bye. That's what happened with my potty training.
Like, why wouldn't they publish, like self-publish or crazy?
I have no idea. So you deal with stuff as a ghostwriter that you don't expect. And it can be very challenging. And sometimes I'll have a project where a client doesn't give me enough personal information. Like I wrote a book with someone, I said, you didn't tell me any of your personal stories, so it's hard to make the book sound like you. Or they said, oh, just use research from Wikipedia. And I'm like, please don't make me do that, but you have to, right? And so I'm worried. I'm like, please don't tell everyone, like, I don't want people to think this is how I research.
Right.
So situations where it's just different challenges with writing. As far as writing my own books, I love what I do. So I'm at a place in my career. I've been writing and working online full time since 2010. So my career is at a place where I'm really happy. So the biggest stresses for me are either clients who take a good book and ruin it, or just normal family emergency stuff, like a massive medical emergency. Like one of my baby needed surgery last year, and that was very stressful. So those are my biggest problems.
Okay. You were just mentioning, something about matching the voice to your client, and they're like, oh, just go to Wikipedia because you didn't know any other story. So what is generally involved in matching the voice of the person you're writing for? So how do you do that?
There are a couple of ways that I do it. The first is I try to interview someone for 3 hours over the course of a project where I ask them questions and I listen to their answers. For some of my clients, English is their second language, or they're so busy they don't have time for that. That's when it starts to get challenging. For those clients, ideally, they have a book they've already written, or they have enough training videos or some recordings of them where I can hear how they talk. Like I have a client right now who, if I said their name, you'd know who they are. Everyone listening will too. And he does everything in triplets. Every sentence goes 1, 2, 3 will lead you to result 1, 2, 3. And so I said, and I was talking to him on the phone. I go, wow, you love to speak in triplets. He goes, what? He didn't even know.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Everything is three types of people will get you 1, 2. It's always 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And so when I'm rating his book, when I'm dictating, I always go triplets. That's part of the process. And so as much of them I can get. Some people, they've written articles and their voice is not good. It's not enough to be a book. So I create a character. I use a lot of accents in my head that sometimes make it into the dictation, which I hope no one ever hears that file. Because I'm like, okay, like I did one for a lady. I was doing a Mexican lady for one chapter of a book. And so I'm trying to sound like a Mexican lady, not to mock the accents. I'm terrible at accents, but to get the cadence, because people from different countries speak English in slightly different ways. And so I'm trying to capture that. If someone's from the South, I do it. If someone's older, I do that. A lot of that's in my head, but some of it might creep into the audio files. So as much as I can, I try to become that character. One of my rules is that I don't mix books. So I restart. Once I'm dictating a book, I finish it. I don't like to do 3 chapters, then do chapters or something else, even though sometimes that's what I need to do to stay ahead with different clients. I can't do it because I'm afraid of voice mingling. So actually, I have a project right now that was a challenge on them. This afternoon when I go home, I have to do the last 6th of this book that I'm just closing out. And part of it was my editor said, hey, the first sections are done if you want to read them. I said, no, I don't do that. I have to do the dictation so I don't get mingled. The other part of the process is I have an editor that I work with full time who she's not the best technical editor. I've worked with really technical editors and they make me want to kill myself because the book sounds like the robot wrote it. So what I found, and this is huge, this is why I hired her full time, and she runs a huge part of my business because she can make a book sound like me. And that's a really different skill. There are certain things you'll notice when you dictate that you do all the time. I say "and so" all the time, and I hate it. I say get rid of every time I say "and so." Get rid of there are certain phrases that you use, especially because sometimes you think things out of order and you're fixing it. So I teach her to remove those because they drive me crazy. They don't bother anyone else. And then I say, make it sound like this. And once she knows the conversational level. So I looked at a bunch of editors. I went through probably 100 auditions. And some of them made me sound perfect grammar. But also the book sounded dead.
Yeah. Right.
And then other people left too many mistakes. So she doesn't leave my book filled with mistakes. But she knows the way I speak is conversational. I'm very personal with my audience. And so there I did it. I have her match that. So when I'm sending her to a client, for example, right now I'm doing the new version of a client's book. I send her the original and say, make it sound like the same person wrote both books. So first I do my best. Then I have her do a pass where she's doing that. And then the final time I read through, I'll do it. And then I send it. Of course, the client has a phase where they go through and edit it as well. The goal is for a client to think they wrote the book. When I'm done, I want a client to get confused and say, did I write this? Or did I hire someone else? That way, when they talk about it to someone else, it feels like they wrote it. So I try to have my clients really heavily involved to do lots of phone calls. I had a client actually 2 months ago email me really upset. He goes, you put a story in here that's not true. How could you put something that's not true in my book? And I sent him the recording of him telling me that story.
Hilarious.
He was so great. He didn't realize like our voices were so mingled that it was his story. And he goes, oh, someone must have lied to me. And I said, I thought you knew the person. I thought it was a personal story, but it was a secondhand story. I go, I figured it was someone you knew, so I included it. And
wow.
I tried to research it. I couldn't find anything to confirm it was a true story. I go, well, you must know the guy. So that's when you know you've done it right. When a client can't tell which parts were from them and which are from you, that's really what I try and do. So it's about interview the person, get them to talk, and just use those recordings if I can. I use as much as I can. So they become the rough draft. Then try to sound like them or imagine I'm then in my head as I dictate. And then number 3 is my editor will go through and she will do everything she can to match that voice. And once all that's done, then I do a pass through every book I write, and then the client will, and they'll send their list of changes. And you never know what's going to happen when you get it back from the client. Sometimes the list of changes is really, really long. And sometimes just I do a client, like, I don't know if she's going to like this. I had a client that I thought was going to hate it. And she goes, just get rid of the word that. Otherwise it's fine. So that was everyone has a word they hate.
Yes.
And I sent it to my editor. She goes, what does that mean? I go, don't care, just do it. So we just went through the whole book and removed that as much as possible. She's like, that's a redneck word. I was like, wait, what? That was so fine by me. Like, I didn't know that's a bumpkin word, but it's gone. It's no problem. Other than that, most clients have a really small amount of changes and they'll trust my expertise. But with everyone, it just depends about creating what they want. I've never had a client complain about the voice, however. The closest was the client who hated the word that.
Wow, that's fascinating. That's so cool. So if someone's looking, there's my word, so, just like saying that. When someone's looking to hire a ghostwriter, what would you say is the most important quality they should look for in their screening process of their applicants? Other than being native English speaking.
Yeah, it really depends what level you're looking for. Like, I know that a lot of people, a lot of your followers, same as me, are looking for someone to write a whole bunch of short books, and they're looking for like an affordable price, which I'm not. I'm a premium.
Yes.
The only person who's more expensive than me is really famous. So they wrote for Rolling Stone and they've been a celebrity for 10 years. So I'm one tier below that. So if you're looking, what I look for when I'm hiring someone is I want someone who can tell a story that I like. So I have a romance series that I put out that I had a ghostwriter write for me because I don't know how to write naughty scenes. I said, I want to put out a romance series. I'm curious about this space. And the only way for me to learn it, I read a few books to try to understand. I wanted to learn it. I want to be able to write it. And I realized those scenes, like, maybe because I'm like, I just don't know how to describe it in a really like great way. Mm-hmm. But I looked for her book. The reason I hired her was that each book made me laugh in the series. It's a 10-book series. And I thought they were really funny. And I was also impressed with the number of different names she could come up with for male parts. So I just thought those are the two of the most important skills. If a book can be funny, which is really hard.
Yeah.
So when I'm hiring someone, I look for that. I look for someone who can be in alignment with my vision. As someone, either I'm a ghostwriter, I hire people. And when someone's hiring me, I make sure they know what they want and that they're a part of the process. I don't really like hands-off clients because, yeah, it's nice that they don't interact with you until the end. They go, wait, this isn't what I wanted. So I like someone that say, you got to be a part of the process. You got to give me 3 hours of your life at least on the phone, and we can create something you're really excited about. So when you're looking to hire a ghostwriter, you want to find someone who they think of things you didn't. That's a level beyond. It's easy to find someone who will just take what you say and write it and it looks okay. I recently hired someone who was probably the best person I've ever hired. He's so brilliant. I don't want to tell him his name. It made me feel like I might not be a good writer. He took my book and turned it into a comic book. And I learned about this process. I didn't know a comic book goes through a script phase, like a movie script. And he took my book and I read it and I started crying. It was so good.
Wow.
I was like, this guy is unbelievable. I said, if I could write like this, boy, that would be amazing. The challenge is then the next phase is to get it turned into art. And it made me want to turn all my books into comic books. That's what I look for. I look for someone who kind of blows my mind. And he wrote the story, and he took my book and used a small portion of it. He probably used 10% of the original book because it has to be visual. And he created this whole story and this whole scenario. And I'm watching and going, man, this would be a great movie. So when you're hiring someone, if they write something that you find impressive, that's what you want. I know there's a lot of ghostwriters out there who will send you books that aren't very good, or they'll send you a link to their Amazon book, which has like 5 bad reviews. I've had that before. I said, why would you send me that? But you find someone who does something beyond what you can do. That's what I always look for. I did a cookbook for children to go with my potty training book, and I hired a grandmother who was cooking for her own grandkids and took pictures and made the recipes because it's something I couldn't do. Mm-hmm. It's beyond my ability. So when you're hiring someone, you don't just want someone who is okay or just good enough. You want someone who you want to read the book. That's really the difference. That separates the good from the great. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't believe in something, it's very hard to sell it.
Yes.
Like my romance novels, I think they're really funny. If I didn't really like reading them, even the naughty scenes, they're so well written to me, and the stories are so funny, and everything about it is and like seeing what name she's going to come up with next, all of that's really good. And of course, it's, in romance, a lot of it's like, it's not realistic, and that's what's good about it. It's that it's like such a silly scenario that it's really enjoyable. And that's how most of them are, and that's what I like about it. That's why a lot of people read it and love it.
Escapism, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so funny. It's like, it's one of those stepbrother ones, and it's like, she's 30 and he's 30, and then their parents get married, and she's like, people are going to think we're siblings. Like, no one would actually think that. No one would care. You know what I mean? It's not like you grew up together or anything. It's like your parents got married after you met, but it creates an artificial scenario that's very funny, and it leads to all these awkward incidents. And that's what I really like about it. I like the escapism. I like the funniness of it. I would struggle with a book that I know some people are purely in hiring ghostwriters for a business model. I understand that. But if you get a book in a genre that you don't read or don't like, then you're really going to struggle because you won't know if it's any good. Mm-hmm. And then you're too distant from it. So even though I don't read a lot of romance, I've read enough to understand it. I have one of my followers is a really successful romance novelist. She asked me a question. I read her whole book. And I was like, wow, this is really unrealistic, but people love it. And that's the genre. I read science fiction either. So you have to really understand whatever market you're trying to enter. It's very hard to do anything. Like, I would never be able to put out a book in historical fiction because I haven't read enough. I would never either write it myself or hire someone. So that's really important part of the process, is to find someone who you like what they write, and it has to be in a genre you enjoy. So even if you don't really read romance right now, but you want to get into it, I recommend reading at least 10 or 20 so you get a feel for it, because it's the most important part of the story is the beats. I thought a romance novel is wall-to-wall nudity. I thought it's like straight out the gates. And even, and I even when the lady who wrote my series wrote it, I was like, you gotta wait forever. And I read more and more. I was like, oh, you're waiting forever for it to happen. I thought like the way a 15-year-old boy would is like, let's get to it. Fast forward, right to the what's with all this story? Like let's put in 30 seconds of acting. And I wouldn't, and if you don't read the bestsellers, you don't know it. This is why whenever I watch a movie with my wife, I always know what's going to happen next, especially if it's in a genre I like action or science fiction. I go, oh, that's the bad guy. And she's like, don't tell me that. It's because if you know a genre well enough, you know the beats. Like the rhythm of the story is so important. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a certain point to the story, which is like, how does she first encounter the guy that she's going to fall in love with later? And then what's holding them apart and who's the villain? And it follows the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. That's the thing.
Exactly.
Even if it's romance, it still follows the hero's journey. There's just a little nudity in it. And even for a lot of genres outside of romance, there's a lot of nudity. Maybe I'm a prude because I fast forward in my Kindle when there's like a sex scene, or nudity, even if it's like a science fiction scene, like, whoa, let's go. I don't need this. Let's get to the fighting. So that's why I don't write those things, because I don't read them.
Sure.
So even if I did another romance novel and wrote it, I would have someone else write those scenes because it's outside my skill set.
Yes.
So there's lots of ways you can supplement what you build by hiring people to do what you're not as good at. But I think that there's a lot of talent out there. There are a lot of people that are amazing writers and have no idea how to market or sell their books. Mm-hmm. So there's a huge gap for them. And the idea that, you're taking someone else's work or whatever, no, it's work for hire. Like, believe me, when someone hires me to ghostwrite a book, I'm very excited when they wire me money. Mm-hmm. So, don't you feel like it stinks? Because I have a client now who he spent $250,000 on marketing. The book's going to be New York Times bestseller. Someone's like, oh, don't you wish your name was on it? I was like, not really. I signed up knowing what I was getting in for.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not like you in some way are being like shortchanged or ripped off or whatever. It's like you signed up to be the ghostwriter. Like that is what you're doing. And you in no way we're going to look for that spotlight or whatever.
I would never spend that on.
Yeah. So, because right now, this actually leads in well to this, because there's a small but really vocal subset of indie fiction authors out there right now who feel that hiring ghostwriters and then publishing those books is somehow scamming the system, and that's taking away opportunities for success from authors who write their own books. So what are your thoughts on that?
I read all of the science fiction books. Every month, I read the top 100 books on Kindle Unlimited science fiction. And I read some books that were clearly written by like a Russian, and the English is broken, but the story's good. I'm like, I don't care. I'll still read it. So for me, when it comes to science fiction action, I'm what's called the least common denominator. Like when you see an action movie with no plot, it's written for me. And my feeling is that you're getting stories out there. So I understand there's people out there that are writing books and they're not getting their voice heard. If your book is good, it will rise to the top. I feel like there's people that want to blame others for their challenges and say that, I only ghostwrite nonfiction, so I'm in a different space, but I totally understand, as I had someone help me with romance because I wanted to tell a story, but I didn't know how. So I see it as just any other business. If you're selling a product people want and people enjoy it, that's fine. The idea that it's zero sum, that, someone bought one book and they'll never buy a book again. It's like, that's not how people read. That's not how people engage. I read a book a day. So I pound through every series. I read loads of people. I don't know. I can see why someone who's struggling was looking for someone to blame. And it's just like, what a waste of your time. Like I listened to a podcast by some screenwriters who talk about movie stuff, and because I'm interested in some of the structure of movies to come up with beats ideas. And they were talking for so long about Twitter stuff. And I was like, why are you on Twitter? Like, what are you doing? I have a Twitter account, but I don't log into it. I could care less. Like I live my life. If I'm not writing, I'm spending time with my children. So for me, writing is a business. And I think people that they want Amazon to be fair, or they want to live in a fantasy world, which doesn't exist. Amazon doesn't care about you, and Amazon doesn't care about me. They're a business. They only care about books that sell. If your book is good and you do enough to kickstart sales, Amazon will be your best friend. If your books don't sell, then nothing will happen. Guess what? If I don't pay for Amazon ads, I don't sell very many books.
Exactly.
It's a business. Mm-hmm. So I would love it to be, and these are the same authors, and there's a lot of people who email me all the time, like, I wrote a book, I uploaded it, why aren't I making any sales? It's like, well, because every day thousands of people do that. Amazon moves you to the top if you generate sales. It's like anything you put in a store. If your product doesn't sell, it doesn't move to the top. It's the same complaints people had when they started moving tech support to India or building our factories to China. You just have to accept the world you live in. And it's not fair, but guess what? Life isn't fair. A lot of the authors that I really like, one of my favorite authors, one we were talking about before this call, he puts out a book every 10 days. What are the odds that he's really writing them all? Pretty low. It doesn't bother me as a consumer, and it doesn't bother me as a writer. As I write my own series, like, I know some of the most famous authors in the world are all ghostwriters.
Yeah.
All their stuff is written by other people. And if you look at, like, I mean, do you really think presidents are writing their own books while they're on the campaign trail? Like, as soon as they finish doing all their speeches, they're sitting in front of a typewriter, typing away? No, of course
not likely.
So we have this belief that it's not fair. And whenever anyone says to me it's not fair, I think they're weak. Like, my mindset is, there was a big sweep in Amazon 2 years ago when a lot of people got in trouble and a lot of accounts got squeezed, or a lot of the, let's say, gray hat things people were doing to generate reviews started getting swept away. All the 9 out of 10 marketers and authors I knew quit.
Wow.
And I said, great, that's an opportunity for me. Whenever a market shrinks, I say, this is when I can make the most money, because 90% of the market just became available. I look for an opportunity to overcome. Right now, there's always something. There's always people complaining about Amazon's review algorithm or the rules changing, and the rules do change all the time. Life's not fair. Okay, I used to sell so many books just by having my book at #1 in my categories. My potty training book was a monster for a long time until Simon & Schuster came calling, and they came after me with a massive marketing budget. Guess what? My book got pushed off #1. Did it stay? Yes. What did I do? Did I call them? Did I write a strongly worded email? No. I wrote more books. I put books into other markets. I went after other categories. Everyone in this game has winners and losers. I do have a problem with people that write books, that put out books that are terrible and try and trick people into clicking to the end and do that stuff. And they mess with the Kindle Unlimited algorithm or doing fake downloads. That stuff, yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But I believe that this business is democracy and the readers get to vote. I have plenty of amazing writers who follow me and plenty of people who work with ghostwriters who follow me in what I do. And for me, all I care about is, what do the readers think? If you write a book and it stinks, doesn't matter. If you write a book or you have a book ghostwritten and it stinks, you do all the marketing you want. It's not going to work. Okay? There's this idea that you can write a terrible book, get a bunch of fake reviews, and then anyone else who reads it won't notice. Like, oh, 10 5-star reviews, so I must be wrong. I must think it's good. No way. That doesn't work. You can get away with that for maybe 2 to 3 weeks, but beyond that, you're going to start getting trashed.
Yes.
And if you have a huge disparity, if you have a bunch of 5-star reviews and then a bunch of 1-star reviews, you get flagged. And that's when a human at Amazon takes a look at your books. And that's when you get an email saying, bye, you're done, you're gone forever. So this idea that it's cheating to have someone else write the book, that's ridiculous. Some of the look, did Shakespeare write all of his own plays? A lot of people think he didn't. Okay, so he's like the first person that's guilty of this. Now you're going to say, oh, you can't watch Romeo and Juliet because it was written by someone else? Come on.
Right. It's like the #2, well, yesterday was #2, I'm not sure if it's still #2, book in the whole Kindle store is the book right now by James Patterson and Bill Clinton. And obviously neither of those two people wrote the book. Of course, they've had contributions into it and the ideas and everything behind that. But James Patterson, he is very well known for using ghostwriters. He's made over $700 million in the past decade. And he has said that he is more adept and proficient at the plotting and the ideas behind the book than writing every sentence. So does that make him a scammer? I don't think so. Doesn't delegitimize him as an author.
No, and if he's looking, I'm up for it. Like,
yeah.
I would in a second, no credit needed. Like, that's the thing. As someone who would be the ghostwriter in that job, I'm like, yeah, I would do that job in a second.
Yes. Sometimes
working with someone who's really successful in their field is just exciting. It's not just about credit. So yeah, I mean, that's what I think. I go, would I take that job? Yes. Would I do a book for Isaac Asimov? Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with hiring. And all it is, it's a different form of being a publisher.
Yes.
All you're doing is paying a flat fee instead of paying a percentage to publish someone's book, which means you're taking on the risk instead of them. Because I published people and it didn't go well. And we're doing a 50-50 profit share and I made like $3. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I published with you. I should have done the flat fee $2,000 choice.
Yeah.
So it's really depending how much risk you're willing to take. So you can say, I don't want any risk, pay me a flat fee. Yes. Or I'll take the risk with you. Let's do 50-50.
For sure.
And in the last month, I did 2 projects that were 50-50. One of them was, the best description would be an absolute disaster. It was the worst selling book I've ever put out. And I don't know why. The book is good, the marketing is book, and the person I'm marketing with is good. But it happens. Sometimes you write a book. One of my favorite books that I wrote, my audience hates. I have 4 business books in the series, and one of them, it goes, sell, trash, sell. So I can't tell you why, because I think it's just as good. Yeah. It's hard when you look at your own stuff, but you have to admit, some of your books stink. Some of my books are terrible. Not the way they're written, but people just don't connect with the content, even if it's important to you. I've written 2 really big books on dealing with depression because I dealt with it in a massive way for most of my life. Not very many people read them, but those who do, it changes their lives. Does that mean that it's a bad effort or waste effort? No. And guess what? One of them is about how to deal with depression by drawing and coloring books. Did I put every sketch in there? Tell you a secret, sure didn't. I hired an artist because I'm not that good at coloring books. I didn't want to show anyone my childish scratches, but it's also when I was in high school and was in a really bad place, I used to break out coloring books so that I could survive. And it's a big part of my life. So it's okay to me. I've done all these things that you're talking about. So I think the idea that there should be rules is only something that people say that when they're losing.
Yes.
It's like, oh, I'm not winning, so I need to change the rules. I read this. Some of the series I read are so over the top. But in one of them, the guy's main character is like a CIA agent, FBI agent, a cop, and like border security agent, and the world UFC champion. And I love that the guy does it. And he always changes people's names that die in the books by like 1 letter. I'm like, wow, you're really flying close to the sun. Anyone he doesn't like, who's like a politician or actor, makes it into the books, turns out to be a bad guy. This guy has to kill him. No one's ended up in handcuffs in these books. But one of the things is, for one of the UFC fights, a guy comes up and says, hey, we'll pay you $100,000 if you won't use the knife strike. And the guy goes, oh, no, I'm going to use that to win. Sorry. You can change the rules if you want. The only reason you ask for that rule change is because you know I'm better at it than you. So that's exactly what people are doing. They go, I can't win. How can I manipulate the playing field? And I get it. Look, it's really hard to be good at writing and good at marketing. I am not very good at marketing. I'll tell you that right now. That's why I have so many partnerships and publishing deals because, my book at its peak was #2 on Amazon. So I've been at the top, but it's hard. And I'm not as good at that as I am at writing. So I partner with people all the time. I do every type of project you can think. Where I have a small commission, where I have a high commission, where I get cash up front. I do it all because it's a different skill. And you can sit down and go, you know what? I'm a good writer, but I'm not great at the nurse just came in. I'm a good writer, I'm not great at marketing. And there's ways to deal with that. Now, I understand the hurdle is there are a lot of hybrid publishers right now that take advantage of you and rip you off. So it's hard to find someone that will be your marketing partner while you write the book and you get a fair commission. And that's where I think that's the solution to this problem. I think people should, instead of looking at you and going, she's ruining the market. I mean, I actually, it's funny. My first thought when I met you was like, I got to write a romance novel for this lady. That was my first thought. My first thought whenever I meet someone was like, how can I get them to market a book for me?
Yeah.
And I think that about everyone. I was talking about a couple of my favorite authors earlier who are notorious for hiring ghostwriters. I was like, yes. I'm going to go to their event because all my thing is, how can I get them to publish one of my books? And if someone has a really big following, it's the same reason people, like Tom Clancy put out a new book like last week. I was like, are you dead? I'm not even sure if he's still around, but it's got his name and then it has someone else's name below it who really wrote the whole thing.
Yes.
That's really good for those authors. If they're smart, it's how you get your foot in the door marketing. So it's the same thing. I told you, some people see an obstacle or reason to quit. I see an opportunity. If you're struggling with marketing and you see someone who's doing something fair, they can just approach you and say, hey, publish one of my books. Let's do a fair split. And that's fine. You're not going to say no to that because it's more money.
Right. Or in my case, I teach people how to do it.
Yeah.
Like I teach people the skill of, you know, how to build a brand and how to build a massive audience and how to get visibility and market your book so you can be profitable and can make money at this. So
that's exactly it. You either look to someone to partner with, to teach you what they're doing, or to complain about. And guess what? Complaining about isn't going to change your life. There are loads of things out there that are not fair.
Mm-hmm.
And if you spend all your time doing that, you're going to spend all your time on Twitter and all your time on Reddit and not enough time making money or being with your family.
Yes.
And I am a passionate writer. I love writing. And I love writing my own books. Even for my fiction series, someone's like, "Oh, you're going to hire a ghostwriter?" I'm like, I got to write at least the first 10 books myself. Then I might let someone come in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about writing, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think that it's the wrong mindset that affects people in all areas of business.
Yes.
You know, I used to have a mastermind of other writers, and they all quit because they all got in trouble. And then their approach was to quit rather than to overcome. And I said, all right, I'm supposed to your audience.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have wins and losses.
Yes.
And you have to look at it and go, okay, here's what I'm good at. Here's what I'm bad at. How do I fix that? And the ways to fix it are either pay someone else to do it, form an alliance, or buy the training and learn how to do it yourself.
Yes. That's good. That is an awesome summary. That's it in a nutshell right there. And thank you so much, Jonathan. This was really great chatting with you. And you gave so much value here. So there's a lot of good gold nugget takeaways from all of this. So thanks so much. And congratulations on your new baby.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to go check them out in a minute.
And maybe I'll put down in the description below your website or where someone could follow you. Or, what's the website?
ServeNoMaster.com.
ServeNoMaster.com. Okay, cool. And I'll be sure to put that in the description as well.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks
for having me.
Okay, bye. Bye. Be sure to go down into the description of this video, click the link, and get my blueprint on how to go from book idea to Amazon bestseller. And if you want to see more videos like this, more interviews like this, be sure to subscribe to my channel. We'll see you on the next video.